Scotland is a land that keeps its secrets well. Beneath the heather and the mist, behind the crumbling walls and the standing stones, there are places that refuse to make sense. Not the postcards, not the castles with gift shops and guided tours. I am talking about the locations that make seasoned historians scratch their heads, that leave archaeologists arguing over pints, that cause locals to lower their voices and change the subject entirely. Places where the rocks are too old, the tunnels too deep, the stories too strange, and the explanations too thin. 13 of them, to be precise, and not one of them has a satisfying answer. Come on, subscribe and let's start 13. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse. 20 miles west of the Isle of Lewis, out in the North Atlantic, where the sea is never truly calm, there sits a cluster of uninhabited islands called the Flannan Isles. They are small, wind-battered, and brutally exposed. And there is almost no reason for anyone to go there, except that in 1899, a lighthouse was built on Elian Moor, the largest of the group, to warn passing ships away from the jagged rocks below. The lighthouse required 3 keepers at a time, stationed on that lonely rock, watching the beam turn through the darkness. On the 26th of December, 1900, a relief vessel called the Hesperus arrived at Elian Moor to rotate the crew. The ship's captain noticed something wrong before they even docked. The lighthouse was dark. No lamp had been lit for days. The flagstaff was bare. There were no supply boxes set out on the landing platform, which was the standard protocol when a relief vessel approached. When the relief keeper climbed to the lighthouse, he found the entrance gate and the main door both closed but unlocked. The clock had stopped. The beds were unmade. A meal lay on the table, partially eaten. 2 of the 3 sets of oilskins were missing from their hooks by the door. The 3rd set remained, and the 3 keepers, Thomas Marshall, James Ducat and Donald MacArthur, were gone. Not a trace, not a note, not a single clue. The official investigation, led by Robert Muirhead of the Northern Lighthouse Board, concluded that the men had been swept into the sea by a freak wave while trying to secure equipment during a storm. The log entries written by Marshall in the days before the disappearance described ferocious weather and seas of extraordinary violence. One entry noted that Ducat, a seasoned keeper of many years' experience, had been unusually quiet. Another mentioned that MacArthur had been crying. These were experienced lighthouse men, accustomed to storms and isolation. Something had shaken them profoundly. But the storm theory never sat comfortably with everyone. The landing platform on Elian Moor sits more than 30 meters above sea level. For a wave to reach the men there, it would have needed to be of almost impossible height. And why would 2 men go out into such a storm, while the 3rd remained inside without his coat? If one man had been swept away, the 2nd might have rushed to help. But the 3rd, why leave the meal? Why leave the door unlocked? Over the years, theories have multiplied. Some suggested a rogue wave of the kind that has since been documented in the open Atlantic, walls of water reaching heights once considered mythical. Others proposed that one keeper had gone mad and killed the other 2 before throwing himself into the sea, though there was no evidence of violence whatsoever. None of it has been proven. The lighthouse was automated in 1971. Nobody lives on the Flannan Isles anymore. The beam still turns, but the keepers are long gone, and their story has never been resolved. 12. The Overtown Bridge. In the quiet outskirts of Dumbarton, roughly 15 miles northwest of Glasgow, there is a Victorian bridge made of grey stone that arches gracefully over the Overtown burn. The bridge was built in 1895 as part of the approach to Overtown House, a baronial mansion on the hill above. It is a handsome structure with solid parapets and views down into the gorge below. There is nothing obviously threatening about it. And yet, since the 1950s, dogs have been leaping from this bridge to their deaths. Estimates suggest that at least 50 dogs have jumped over the past 7 decades. The behavior follows a remarkably consistent pattern. Dogs walking across with their owners will suddenly bolt to one side, scramble over the parapet, and hurl themselves into the ravine below. The drop is roughly 15 meters onto the rocks of the burn. Many dogs have died. Some have survived and, disturbingly, have returned to jump again. The jumps tend to occur on the same side, between the final 2 parapets on the right. They happen most frequently in clear, dry weather, and they happen almost exclusively to dogs with long snouts. In 2005, the Scottish SPCA investigated. One theory, proposed by an animal habitat expert, suggested that mink urine from the undergrowth below overwhelmed the dog's senses, causing them to leap without understanding the drop. Mink are present in the area, and the theory accounts for the breed and seasonal patterns. But mink are common along rivers throughout Scotland, and dogs do not routinely throw themselves off bridges elsewhere. The more superstitious explanations lean into the history of the place. In 1994, a local man threw his infant son from the bridge, claiming the child was the Antichrist. The bridge, people say, has a darkness about it. Whether that darkness is chemical, atmospheric, or something else depends on whom you ask. No definitive explanation has ever been accepted. 11. The Balmoral cairns. On the private estate of Balmoral in Royal Deeside, there stand 11 large cairns scattered across the grounds. Most visitors assume these are ancient structures. They are not. Every single one was built during the reign of Queen Victoria, between 1852 and 1901, to commemorate members of the royal family or significant events. They are enormous, some standing over 10 meters tall, and they are curiously excessive for what they represent. The largest is the Prince Albert cairn, erected in 1862 after the death of Victoria's husband. It towers above the tree line and can be seen from miles away. But others mark far less momentous occasions. One commemorates a marriage. Another marks the purchase of the estate. One simply celebrates a visit. The labour involved in hauling thousands of stones in the Scottish Highlands and the almost obsessive frequency with which they were erected raises questions that have never been fully answered. Why cairns? Victoria could have commissioned statues or plaques. Instead, she chose a form associated with ancient Highland tradition, with the marking of graves and boundaries in a landscape she had adopted but did not belong to. Some historians interpret the cairns as an attempt to embed the monarchy physically into the Scottish landscape. Others suggest that Victoria's grief became compulsive, and the building went far beyond what was proportionate. What makes them genuinely mysterious are the rituals that accompanied their construction. Victoria insisted that every member of the household place a stone on the cairn. The ceremony was elaborate, almost ritualistic, and participants described feeling as though the occasion had more significance than they fully understood. The royal family has never commented publicly beyond acknowledging their existence. 10. The Hermit's Castle, Achmelvich. On a rocky headland above one of the most beautiful beaches in Sutherland, overlooking the turquoise waters of Achmelvich Bay, there sits what is almost certainly the smallest castle in Europe. It is barely larger than a garden shed, built from rough concrete reinforced with driftwood and scrap metal, with tiny windows and walls thick enough to withstand a siege. It was built in the 1950s by a man named David Scott, an architect from Norwich who abandoned his career, travelled to the remote northwest Highlands and constructed this miniature fortress by hand on land he did not own. Scott lived in the structure for several years, entirely alone, with no running water and no electricity. The building is structurally sound despite its materials, and its design shows clear architectural knowledge. The walls are curved to deflect wind. The entrance minimizes exposure to the prevailing westerlies. And yet the whole thing looks like the work of a man who had lost his mind. Nobody knows why Scott came to Achmelvich. He left no writings and no explanation. Local accounts describe him as quiet, polite, and utterly self-contained. At some point in the early 1960s he left, as quietly as he had arrived, and was never heard from again. No record of his death has been definitively linked to him. The castle remains, weathered but intact, with no plaque, no sign and no information board. It is simply there, and the man who built it is simply gone. 9. The Clava cairns. About 6 miles east of Inverness, in a clearing surrounded by ancient trees, there stands a group of Bronze Age burial cairns, roughly 4,000 years old. The Clava cairns consist of 3 large circular structures surrounded by standing stones. 2 are passage graves, with narrow corridors leading to central chambers. The third is a ring cairn with no entrance at all. The passage graves are oriented so that their corridors point directly towards the setting sun on the winter solstice. On that single day, the dying sunlight travels down the narrow passage and illuminates the inner chamber with a brief golden glow before darkness returns. This alignment is precise, deliberate, and repeatable, achieved by people with no written language and no metal tools. The builders needed to understand the solar cycle with considerable accuracy, calculate the angle of the setting sun, and orient the passage accounting for local topography. They constructed a corbelled stone passage of sufficient length and narrowness to channel light without scattering it. This is sophisticated astronomy combined with precise engineering carried out 4 millennia ago by a culture that left no other record of such capability. The ring cairn is perhaps the strangest element. With no entrance, the dead would have been sealed in permanently. Some researchers suggest it was built around the remains, stone by stone. Others believe it was never a tomb at all. The standing stones surrounding the cairns are graded by height, tallest to the southwest and shortest to the northeast, following the arc of the sun. This grading is consistent across all 3 cairns, though its purpose is unknown. Subscribe to prove that these videos actually help and actually make sense. 8. The Fairy Glen, Skye. In the northeast corner of the Isle of Skye, just above the village of Uig, there is a small valley that looks as though it belongs on another planet. The Fairy Glen is a landscape of miniature conical hills, spiral ridges, tiny lochs and strange, perfectly circular formations in the grass, all compressed into an area roughly half a mile across. The geological explanation is a landslip. A section of the basalt escarpment collapsed and slid downhill, creating a jumble of displaced rock that weathered over thousands of years into the surreal landscape visible today. The conical hills are remnants of harder rock. The circular formations result from differential weathering. It is all perfectly explicable in geological terms. And yet it does not feel explicable. The hills are too regular, too evenly spaced, too perfectly conical. The whole valley carries an atmosphere of intense, unsettling stillness. Visitors routinely describe feeling disoriented or watched without being able to say why. Dogs are said to behave strangely, refusing to enter certain areas. The name is ancient. The Fairy Glen has been associated with the Sith, the fairy folk of Gaelic mythology, for as long as anyone can remember. In traditional Highland belief, the Sith were not the delicate winged creatures of Victorian illustration, but powerful, dangerous beings who lived beneath the hills in a parallel world. Certain places were considered thin spots where the boundary between worlds was weak. This was one such place. In recent years, visitors have taken to building stone spirals on the largest hill, known as Castle Ewan, a natural basalt tower that looks uncannily like a ruined fortification. Conservation groups have dismantled them repeatedly, only for new ones to appear. There is something compulsive about the behavior, as though visitors feel an urge to participate in whatever the glen represents. Nobody has adequately explained why this particular patch of hillside provokes such a response. 7. The Gilmerton Cove. Beneath the streets of Gilmerton, a suburb on the southern edge of Edinburgh, there lies a series of hand-carved chambers and passageways cut directly into the sandstone bedrock. The complex consists of several rooms connected by narrow tunnels, with carved benches, tables and shelves hewn from the living rock. The ceilings are low, the space is cramped, and the air cool and still. There is no natural light, and nobody knows who made them or why. The earliest documented reference dates to 1724, when a blacksmith named George Patterson claimed to have carved the entire complex single-handedly over a period of 5 years. Patterson said he intended to use the space as a dwelling, and indeed he lived there for some time, operating a drinking den in the underground rooms that became notorious among the less respectable elements of Edinburgh society. The authorities eventually shut it down, citing concerns about morality and public order. But the claim that one man carved these chambers by hand has never been convincing. The volume of rock removed is estimated at several hundred tons. The quality of carving is consistent and precise, suggesting tools and techniques beyond a single blacksmith. The layout is complex, with rooms of different sizes, connected by passages that branch in ways implying a deliberate plan. Features including what appear to be a well and a series of uniform alcoves suggest a purpose more specific than habitation. Various theories have been proposed. Some historians believe the cove predates Paterson by centuries, possibly originating as a medieval hiding place or a meeting place for secret societies. The Knights Templar have been invoked, though there is no evidence linking them to the site. Archaeological investigations in 2003 and 2007 found nothing that could definitively date the complex or identify its creators. The cove is open to the public today, and the guides will tell you, with refreshing frankness, that they do not know who made these rooms, when they were made, or what they were for. 6. The Ring of Brodgar. On the narrow isthmus between the Loch of Stennis and the Loch of Hermit in Orkney, there stands one of the most impressive stone circles in the British Isles. The Ring of Brodgar originally consisted of 60 standing stones arranged in a perfect circle roughly 104 meters in diameter, enclosed by a deep rock-cut ditch. 27 stones remain upright, the tallest over 4.5 meters high. The ring is approximately 4,500 years old, making it roughly contemporary with the earliest phases of Stonehenge. But in some respects it is more impressive than its more famous southern cousin. The ditch alone represents an extraordinary feat of engineering. It is 6 meters wide and over 3 meters deep in places. And it was cut from solid flagstone, a dense, hard rock that would have required enormous effort to break and remove. Estimates suggest the excavation would have taken roughly 80,000 man-hours, the equivalent of 100 people working full-time for 4 years. And yet we know almost nothing about its builders. Unlike Stonehenge, the ring has never been fully excavated. No burials have been found. No significant artifacts recovered. The soil within the circle is remarkably clean, almost sterile, suggesting either deliberate maintenance or a use that left no physical trace. The purpose remains unknown. It is not a burial site. It is not a settlement. It shows no obvious astronomical alignment. It is part of the heart of Neolithic Orkney, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that includes the standing stones of Stennis, Maeshowe and Skara Brae. The people who built these sites were settled, organised and capable of sustained collective effort on a massive scale. But they left no writing and no explanation. The stones are their only testimony, and the stones do not speak. 5. Sawney Bean's Cave. On the coast of South Ayrshire, between Girvan and Ballantrae, there is a deep-sea cave set into the cliffs at Benane Head. The cave extends roughly 200 meters into the rock, with branching passages partially flooded at high tide. It is accessible only at low water, and according to a legend that has persisted for over 400 years, it was once home to a family of cannibals. The story of Alexander Sawney Bean claims he moved to this remote coast in the late 15th or early 16th century with a woman he had taken as a partner. Over roughly 25 years, the couple and their growing family, which supposedly numbered as many as 48 members through incest, survived by ambushing travelers, robbing them, and eating their flesh. The pickled remains of their victims were said to fill the deeper chambers. The family was eventually discovered when a victim escaped and raised the alarm. The king sent 400 men with bloodhounds. The clan was captured and executed without trial. The problem is that none of this can be verified. There is no contemporary documentary evidence for the existence of Sawney Bean, his family, or the killings attributed to them. No court records, no church records, no tax records, and no correspondence from the relevant period mentions anything resembling the story. The earliest known written account dates to the mid-18th century in a broadsheet published in London, over 200 years after the events supposedly took place. The story has all the hallmarks of a propaganda piece, and some historians have argued that it was invented by English writers to portray the Scots as barbaric and uncivilized. And yet the cave is real. It is exactly where the legend says it is, exactly as described. Deep, branching, partially submerged, remote and difficult to access. It could absolutely have sheltered a family for years without detection. The coastal road above was isolated and poorly travelled, and disappearances in the area during the relevant period are not impossible to imagine. The deeper chambers, which are flooded at most tides, have never been properly explored by archaeologists. Whether Sawney Bean was real, a distorted memory, or a complete fabrication remains one of the most debated questions in Scottish historiography. The cave waits at Benenay Head, damp and dark, and offers no answers. 4. The parallel roads of Glenroy. In remote Glenroy, east of Fort William, there are 3 perfectly horizontal lines etched into the hillsides on both sides of the valley. These lines, known as the parallel roads, run for miles along the glen, maintaining an exact level contour with a precision that looks artificial. From a distance, they resemble pathways carved by some enormous hand. The local explanation, held for centuries, was that the roads were hunting paths built by the Fingalians, the giant warriors of Gaelic mythology, led by the legendary Fionn mac Cumhaill. The roads were said to have been used to drive deer along the mountainsides towards waiting hunters in the valley below. The explanation was satisfying in its way, because the roads genuinely look like something deliberately constructed. The scientific explanation, established in the mid-19th century, is that they are ancient shorelines. During the last ice age, glaciers blocked the mouth of Glenroy, creating successive ice-dammed lakes. Each lake carved a distinct shoreline before the dam failed and water drained lower. Charles Darwin first proposed a version of this theory, later refined by Louis Agassiz and Thomas Jameson. The science is almost certainly correct, but knowing what the parallel roads are does not dispel their strangeness. They have survived roughly 10,000 years of weathering and remain sharply defined. They appear on both sides of the valley, at exactly the same height, with exactly the same profile. Standing in Glenroy is deeply unsettling, because your brain insists something man-made is before you, while your intellect says no human hand was involved. The tension between those perceptions is what makes the place genuinely uncanny. 3. Skara Brae. On the west coast of mainland Orkney, in the Bay of Scale, there is a Neolithic settlement older than the Great Pyramids of Egypt. Skara Brae was occupied from roughly 3,100 to roughly 2,500 before the Common Era, and it consists of 8 stone houses connected by covered passageways. The houses were buried under sand dunes for thousands of years until a violent storm in 1850 uncovered them. Each house follows the same plan: a large square room with a central hearth, a stone dresser against the far wall, and stone beds on either side. The dressers are positioned to face the entrance, the first thing a visitor would see upon entering. They are display furniture built 5,000 years ago. The settlement includes indoor drainage, covered passageways, and what appears to be a rudimentary sewage system. These were not hunter-gatherers clinging to survival on the edge of the world. They were farmers and herders who grew barley and wheat, raised cattle and sheep, and had access to a diverse diet that included fish, shellfish, seabirds, and wild plants. They made pottery, jewelry, and tools of considerable quality. They decorated their homes with carved symbols and geometric patterns. They lived in a community that was planned, organized, and socially complex. And then they left. Around 2,500 before the Common Era, Skara Brae was abandoned. The houses were filled with sand, either deliberately or by natural processes, and the settlement disappeared from view and from memory. Why the inhabitants left is not known. Climate change is the most common explanation since conditions shifted cooler and wetter across northern Europe. But other Orkney sites continued in use after this date, and the abandonment may have been caused by a more specific event: a storm, a flood, a social conflict that left no trace in the archaeological record. Some valuable objects, including a necklace of carved bone beads, were found in the passageways, as though dropped during departure, but the houses were not stripped. Furniture remained in place. Tools were left on shelves. Whatever happened, the people of Skara Brae walked away and never came back, and the sand covered everything and kept it safe for 4,500 years. 2. The Callanish Stones. On the west coast of the Isle of Lewis, on a ridge overlooking Loch Rogue, there stands one of the most enigmatic stone monuments in Europe. The Callanish Stones consist of a central circle of 13 stones, with a monolith at the center rising almost 5 meters high, and 4 stone avenues radiating outward to the north, south, east and west, creating a shape that resembles a Celtic cross, though it predates Christianity by at least 3,000 years. The stones were erected between approximately 3000 and 2800 before the Common Era, making them roughly contemporary with the earliest phases of the Egyptian pyramids. They are made of Louisian gneiss, one of the oldest rock types on Earth, formed roughly 3 billion years ago, which gives them a texture and color unlike any other standing stones in Britain. They are not smooth but twisted, striated and deeply weathered, with bands of grey, white and black running through them like frozen rivers. In certain lights, particularly at dawn and dusk, they appear almost organic, as though they grew from the earth rather than being placed upon it. The purpose has been debated for centuries. The stones appear to have a complex relationship with the lunar cycle. Every 18.6 years, the moon reaches its most southerly point, an event known as the lunar standstill. And when viewed from within the circle, the moon appears to skim along a distant mountain range called the Sleeping Beauty, so named because its profile resembles a reclining figure. The alignment is too precise to be coincidental. A culture tracking an 18.6-year cycle with sufficient precision to align a stone monument must have possessed an observational tradition spanning many generations. They needed to watch, record, and transmit knowledge across decades, without writing and without instruments. The intellectual achievement is staggering. Around 1500 before the Common Era, peat buried the stones up to their shoulders. They remained hidden for roughly 3,000 years until the peat was cleared in 1857. Beneath it, excavators found a small chambered tomb inserted into the monument after its original construction, containing fragments of human bone. Who was buried there and why at the heart of the circle is not known. People will gather for the next lunar standstill, as they have gathered for 5,000 years. The watchers today understand the astronomy. What they do not understand is why it mattered so much to the people who raised the stones. 1. The Edinburgh Vaults. Beneath the South Bridge in the heart of Edinburgh, there lie 19 stone arches, and beneath those arches, there are chambers. Hundreds of chambers. A buried neighborhood of vaults, cellars and passageways that was sealed and forgotten for nearly 2 centuries before being rediscovered in the 1980s. The vaults were built in 1788 when the South Bridge was constructed. The arches created enclosed spaces, originally used as workshops, storage cellars, and taverns. For the first few decades, the vaults functioned as legitimate commercial space. Cobblers, smelters, and wine merchants operated from the chambers, but the vaults were never properly waterproofed. Damp seeped through the stone. Mold colonized the walls. By the early 19th century, the businesses had moved out. What moved in was poverty. By the 1840s, the vaults had become one of the most wretched slums in Europe. Entire families lived in the chambers, sharing space with rats, sewage, and the dead. The city's poorest inhabitants, including Irish immigrants fleeing the famine, were packed into rooms that never saw daylight, that had no ventilation and no sanitation, and that flooded regularly with filth from the streets above. Disease was constant. Crime was endemic. The body snatchers, Burke and Hare, who murdered at least 16 people in 1828 to sell their corpses to the Edinburgh Medical School, operated in the streets directly above the vaults, and it is widely believed, though not proven, that some of their victims were drawn from the desperate population living below. At some point in the mid-19th century, the vaults were sealed. The entrances were bricked up. The spaces filled with rubble, and the entire underground complex was erased from the city's memory. For over 100 years, maps did not show them. Records did not mention them. The people walking along the South Bridge had no idea what lay beneath their feet. The rediscovery came in 1985, when Norrie Rowan found an entrance during renovation work on a building adjacent to the bridge. What he found was extraordinary. Chamber after chamber of intact 18th and 19th century spaces, complete with fireplaces, cobbled floors, iron fittings, and, in some rooms, the remains of what appeared to be furniture. Thousands of artifacts were recovered, including oyster shells, wine bottles, pottery fragments, clay pipes, and the bones of animals. In at least one chamber, human remains were found, though their origin and identity have never been established. The vaults are open to the public today, operated by several competing tour companies, and they are marketed primarily as a haunted attraction. Visitors report cold spots, unexplained sounds, the sensation of being touched, and in some cases visual apparitions. Whether one takes these reports seriously or not, the vaults are undeniably atmospheric. They are dark, cold, silent and claustrophobic, and the knowledge that thousands of people lived and died in these spaces lends them a weight that is difficult to dismiss. But the real mystery of the Edinburgh Vaults is not supernatural, it is historical. How did an entire underground neighbourhood, home to hundreds or possibly thousands of people, get sealed, forgotten, and erased from public knowledge for over a century? The people who lived in the vaults were the city's poorest, its most vulnerable, and its most invisible inhabitants. When the chambers were sealed, those people were dispersed into other slums, other overcrowded closes and wynds, and the vaults became a blank space on the map, a secret hidden in plain sight beneath one of the busiest streets in Edinburgh. The vaults exist today as a monument to what cities choose to forget. The stones are real, the chambers are real, the suffering that took place in them was real. And the fact that all of it could be bricked up and forgotten tells you something about Edinburgh, about Scotland, and about the way history is made and unmade, that no ghost story ever could. Scotland does not give up its mysteries easily. The stones stand where they were placed 5,000 years ago, and they say nothing. The caves hold their darkness. The bridges keep their secrets. The vaults beneath the streets remember what the streets themselves have chosen to forget. 13 places that resist explanation. 13 locations where the known and the unknown sit side by side. And I can tell you, as a man who has spent his years gathering stories from these islands, that the not knowing is not a failure. It is the point. Scotland's mysteries are not problems to be solved. They are invitations to wonder, and wonder is something we could all use a good deal more of. I am a grandpa, and grandpas worry. Look after yourself.